Hello and welcome. I am Kriti Mehta and you're watching America 360 on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines this hour. The FBI arrests a suspect linked to pipe bombs placed outside the Republican and Democratic National Committee headquarters. The devices were planted on the eve of the January 6, 2021 Capitol riot. US President Donald Trump says he believes Vladimir Putin wants to end the Ukraine war despite inconclusive talks in Moscow. Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff and son-in-law Jared Kushner have met with Putin in the Kremlin but have not reached a breakthrough. The Pentagon's independent watchdog raises concerns over Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's use of the messaging app Signal to discuss US military strikes in the Yemen. The investigation has found that his actions could have endangered American troops, though he has not violated classification rules. Luis Inacio Lula da Silva urges Donald Trump to seek a diplomatic resolution to the Venezuela crisis during a recent phone call. Lula warns that any US military intervention could trigger serious collateral damage, destabilizing neighboring nations, increasing migration flows, and worsening the humanitarian situation across Latin America. The hepatitis B vaccine for newborns is under renewed review in the United States as a committee appointed by Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. prepares to reassess the long-standing recommendation. The panel will meet in Atlanta to evaluate infant vaccination guidelines despite opposition from many medical professionals. US employers announce a sharp drop in planned layoffs in November, but hiring intentions remain weak. Job cuts fall 53% from October, totaling just over 71,000, the lowest for the month since 2022. Rwanda's foreign minister says a new accord with the US and DRC could help advance peace efforts, even as Rwandan-backed M23 rebels and the Congolese army accuse each other of breaching the ceasefire in eastern Congo. Russian President Vladimir Putin lands in New Delhi for his two-day visit to India starting today. Putin and India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi will attend an annual summit held by both the countries. And let's start the breaking news bulletin. Viewers, the FBI has arrested a suspect in connection with pipe bombs placed outside the US Republican and Democratic National Committee headquarters. The devices were planted on the eve of the January 6th of 2021 Capitol riot. Authorities say the bombs were safely deactivated and never exploded. The arrest comes nearly after a 5-year manhunt aided by $500,000 reward. Investigators describe it as the conclusion of an extensive nationwide probe into the attempted attacks. And now moving on, Donald Trump has also said that he believes Russia's President Putin wants to end the Ukraine war despite inconclusive talks in Moscow, as US officials prepare for a follow-up meeting with Kyiv's top negotiator. This comes as President Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff and son-in-law Jared Kushner huddled in the early hours with Putin in Kremlin, but reached no breakthrough on halting Europe's worst conflict since World War II, Russia-Ukraine war. Now, following the Moscow meeting, US officials are now scheduled to meet with Ukraine's top negotiator Rustem Umerov in Florida. And joining us in this discussion is Adrian Calamel, who's a scholar on terrorism. Joins us live from New York. Thank you, Mr. Calamil, for joining us here at NewsX World. Appreciate you giving us your time. Crucial here that questions will be raised on the statements that are coming from Trump. Says that Putin wants to end the war when talks are inconclusive, when Russia and Ukraine keep striking each other's power facilities. Why would Trump make that remark at this time?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on the show, and good evening to yourself, Kriti, and all your viewers. Why would Trump make a statement like that? He has been making statements like this, well, since before he got elected. Well, right when he got elected, he thought he thought Putin wanted peace, and this is a consistent messaging that's come from Trump. I think patience has worn thin over times, but now we're at this place again where he says he believes Putin wants some type of end to the war. And the only reason why I would say that Putin would want some end to the war is just because he's been at this for a very long time now. If you just take away the Ukraine conflict, if you really want to look at his time in leadership, he's been in constant war since basically 1999. You look at the Second Chechen War, you look at Georgia, you look at the first Ukraine and Crimea, that's 2014 to 2022. They have a manpower problem, and they also have a firepower problem, which they didn't have in the past. Now, on the flip side of this, Putin, if you look at the actions, that's not a person who wants peace. But in terms of what he's playing with right now may dictate that he does need to draw some type of ceasefire or draw some type of lines. The other conclusion that I would reach is that I look at Putin and I see a person who, he may be inching towards a deal, but he's always going to work towards the most favorable deal for him after all the things that have already gone on. So you look at this most recent aggression in Ukraine, full-scale invasion. Part of the end deal, any type of end deal, is him going to be retaining some of these areas that he's invaded. In the first invasion, 2014, he took probably the most industrialized parts of the Ukraine. So Putin, he's I don't trust him. I don't think Trump should trust him. I don't think anybody should trust him. My fear is also that if this does come to some type of resolution, what's he going to do? Is he going to wait a couple of years and then pivot around and maybe go after Estonia, Lithuania, maybe probe one of the NATO countries, see what happens then?
Adrian, I also want to take this up with you now. Russia is continuing to advance in eastern Ukraine, and in fact, it appears now that terms of the plan that some say are favored towards Russia are because of its recent, progresses in the Ukrainian territory. But despite that and Trump's statement, Putin has said that parts of the plan are unacceptable to it. So clearly, the deal is far from finalizing, as Trump seems to claim. Now, Putin is also in India, and Prime Minister Modi is likely going to be pressuring him once again to arrive at peace. But what should we expect from Putin amid all this happening, all these events happening? Is Putin any likely to concede?
I don't think he is likely to concede. There's certain things that have already been established that Ukraine's not going to get, and those were red lines for Putin. I think it's more bluster than anything, but no NATO membership, one being one of them. There are a number of things that kind of strips away the defense of Ukraine that Putin's already achieved. He understands weakness, and when he sees weakness, it's when he advances. And we've seen this stalling out, possible peace talks, but he's kept up the campaign. What he also understands, and what Russians understand, is American firepower. And that's been a big problem about this war from the very beginning, is about the way it's been prosecuted, especially from the Western side. It's been this drip of slowly defensive weapons, and then, really debating whether to put offensive type weapons into the battlefield. Putin, as I said before, he has he now has a firepower issue, which was not the case in the past. And he's having to deal with it in bringing ballistic missiles up from the Islamic Republic, which also took a beating during the 12-day war and their stockpiles. So if there's multiple things, I can see this going one of three ways. If the U.S. and the West really wants to bring this to a conclusion, I don't see it going this way. It's saying, okay, you know what we're going to do? We're going to introduce this. We're going to fight this like a real war. Then Putin starts to say, all right, we're going to back down. It's people claim World War III is happening, but no. I've heard that claim multiple times. The other option is Putin gets what he wants, and the compromise is all on the Ukraine's part. They lose territory. They lose, they're the big losers in this. And then the final outcome, the other one is, and I just don't see it happen, some type of equitable outcome where both sides win and both sides lose to a certain degree. One that Zelensky agrees to and one that Putin agrees to. I just can't see him ever reaching that point. Maybe we will. I don't like to bet against Trump because he's able to get things done in different ways than a lot of people, in different methods and ways, and that make things possible. But we just have to look at Vladimir Putin and the person who he is and what he's done with Russia. And it's been an expansionist policy within his own territory and then outside his territory. And I think he continues to look at restoring parts of the Soviet Empire, which he calls the greatest calamity, the collapse, the greatest calamity of the 20th century. That's his vision. That's his mindset. That's who he is.
All right. Well, sure. I would thank you for your comment there and also request you to stay on as there are some more news that's coming in. Viewers, we're now learning that an investigation by the Pentagon's independent watchdog has raised concerns over Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's use of the commercial messaging app Signal to discuss U.S. military strikes on Yemen. The probe found that Hegseth's actions could have endangered American troops, although it concluded he did not violate any classification rules as he holds the authority to declassify information. The investigation, which has been forwarded to Congress, follows a report by U.S. media revealing a Signal chat where Hegseth and then National Security Advisor Mike Waltz discussed the strikes with the real-time details, including the timing and specifics of the military action. The issue could reignite debate surrounding Hegseth's conduct, especially following his role in U.S. strikes on alleged drug trafficking boats. And I now request Adrian Calamil to join us back in the discussion. Adrian, I'd like to understand from you, for our international viewers, what are the repercussions of Hegseth's actions?
Okay, let me start by saying what Pete Hegseth did was absolutely wrong. He knows it was wrong. Everybody that was in that Signal chat knows discussing these type of things. They understand that. This is being recycled now as a political tool to go after Pete Hegseth. That's what this is being used as. If we want to look at, okay, he possibly put U.S. troops in danger. Let me reel back the clock to Benghazi 2013, where you have Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, you have Jake Sullivan, you have Susan Rice. They're all involved in the Benghazi affair and the cover-up, where you have American soldiers die. Complete dereliction of duty. It was all done under the clock, behind closed doors. The investigation turned into a giant, it was a circus. It never got to the bottom of what actually happened there. So, I want to contrast these two things, because in Benghazi, people died. And then they went on to the network news and for 3 days perpetuated a false story about a video fueling hatred, when this was a coordinated campaign and attack by elements of Al-Qaeda and the IRGC across the Middle East, and Benghazi was the main target, was the one that got hit the hardest. People died there. What Hegseth did was wrong. He knows better. They're not making this mistake again. Waltz was reprimanded. It may have been involved with that, but again, I'm going to come back to this is political. And you mentioned Venezuela targeting of the boats. It's Congress trying to put the boots to Hegseth and get in the way of American foreign policy to make sure that a narco state isn't continuing to ship people, cocaine, and other things. It's become a beachhead for the Islamic Republic of Iran. It's also become a beachhead for Russia, and it's a major security concern. So this is to hurt Hegseth, to hurt President Trump's foreign policy. And we saw this during his first administration, continuing to come back after him for things that are kind of dead in the water, recycling them to kind of put us off track and his administration and policies off track, which is dangerous. This is one of the things that really upsets me about American politics is when politics gets in the way of foreign policy. And we see this happen way too often. And this is why America, in a lot of cases, our foreign policy is broken, depending on who's in charge and in power.
All right, I'd leave it at that. Adrian, thank you for joining us for now here at NewsX World. And viewers, with that, we shift our focus now. Members of Congress have said that they will investigate whether the U.S. military has broken the law by allegedly killing 2 survivors of a strike on a suspected drug trafficking vessel in the Caribbean. The White House has defended the strikes as lawful, stating that they comply with the law of war, but human rights groups and legal experts have condemned the follow-up attack as potential murder or a war crime. The attack on September 2, authorized by Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, destroyed a vessel carrying 11 people. Reports suggest a second strike targeted 2 survivors clinging to the wreckage, raising questions about compliance with international law. Congress could subpoena officials, limit military funding, or hold briefings, while the Justice Department and the military could investigate potential war crimes. International tribunals are unlikely to intervene, and the U.S. allies have expressed concern. Prosecution could target Hegseth, Admiral Frank Bradley, or others. The precedent for convicting high-ranking officers in combat operations is limited. Joining us in this discussion is Quentin Hitchcock, international affairs expert, joining us live from Dallas. Thank you, Mr. Hitchcock, for joining us here at NewsX World. And now, all these developments coming after Trump has said that he's going to look into the second TAP strike. Are we to believe that this was not something that was intended, really?
Well, whether it was intended or not, I don't know. But what I do know is that this is a story. I want to be very clear to your international viewers. This is a story that has been brought to the surface by Democrats in this country and by the American media system that is actively trying to destroy President Trump's reputation. Let me share with you that the other half of this country, conservatives and Republicans, are praising this president for actually putting forth action and defending American citizens against the endless amounts of dangerous narcotics, fentanyl, and other dangerous drugs, not to mention human smuggling, that comes from Venezuela into this country every single day of the year. So whether it was intended or not in terms of the second strike, I don't know. I got to be honest, in my personal opinion, I don't know that it matters. And with a significant portion of this country, they're not interested in this. They see it as an attack, as a game to take down President Trump's cabinet or his efforts in the Caribbean. But most of this country, at least those that voted for Trump, are actively praising his efforts on this.
So are you saying that the U.S. military did not commit a war crime here?
I can't speak to whether they committed a war crime or not. My personal opinion is no, that they were within their legal rights to do this. Because, and I think this gets lost everywhere when this subject gets brought up, is our military had intelligence that these were drug smugglers, and this were fentanyl smugglers coming into the United States, bringing a deadly narcotic that kills hundreds of thousands of Americans every single year. Every single year, many of which children that die of overdoses. So my opinion is that it would be a war crime for us to turn our backs on this drug smuggling and not take action. So not going to speak to the legalities of this, but I trust this administration, and again, much of this country is applauding their efforts in this, because past administrations have done exactly that. They've turned their back on this issue, and as a result, many avoidable deaths have occurred all over this country.
Right, thank you for your perspective there, and leave it at that. Viewers, we now move on. The hepatitis B vaccine for newborns is facing new scrutiny in the United States, as experts appointed by Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. prepared to review the long-standing recommendation. The committee, which is reshaped under the Trump administration, is set to meet in Atlanta to revisit infant vaccination guidelines, despite strong pushback from many doctors. Kennedy has launched a broad re-examination of multiple vaccines, including those used safely for decades. His stance, rooted in the long-standing anti-vaccine rhetoric, is raising serious concerns across the medical community. Health experts warn that weakening vaccine recommendations could drive immunization rates even lower and fuel the resurgence of preventable diseases. Moving on, viewers, U.S. employers announced a sharp drop in planned layoffs in November, but hiring intentions still remain weak. Job cuts fell 53% from October, totaling just over 71,000, the lowest for the month since 2022. Still, layoffs are up 24% from last year, with over 1.17 million job cuts announced so far in 2025. In contrast, planned hiring is a decade low, down 35% from last year, reflecting uncertainty in the economy. Analysts cite tariffs, slowing demand, reduced immigration, and AI integration as factors weighing on the labor market. Telecom, tech, and meat processing firms led layoffs last month, while AI accounted for just over 6,000 job cuts in November. And moving on now, viewers, the wife of former Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernandez, who was convicted of helping to smuggle 400 tons of cocaine into the United States, Ana Gracia de Hernandez, she has said that today is a day to thank the U.S. President Donald Trump for a miracle in her life. Let's listen to what she had to say.
Y finalmente, así es, hoy el mundo sabe, desde el hombre más informado del mundo, el presidente Donald Trump, que lo que se hizo contra Juan Orlando fue un acto de injusticia por un gobierno del expresidente Biden, y él ha puesto un remedio a eso a través de este perdón completo y total a los otros temas. Pero hoy es un día para darle gracias a Dios, al pueblo hondureño y al presidente Donald Trump por lo que yo considero es un milagro en nuestras vidas, la libertad de Juan Orlando.
However, the results have flipped in the contested Honduran presidential election, as conservative candidate Nasri Afura has taken a slight lead over the centrist Salvador Nasrallah with 84.4% of votes counted till now. The National Party's Asfura held 40.05%, about 88,000 votes ahead of Liberal Party's Nasrallah, who had 39.75%, while Rishi Moncada of the ruling leftist Libre Party remained behind in the third place. Meanwhile, Nasrallah has said that the results will take few days, so he asked people to remain calm and patient. The Honduran presidency is decided in a single round, as the candidate with the most votes wins, even if the margin is narrow or they fall short of an absolute majority. And moving on now, the United Kingdom and Norway have signed a defense pact to jointly operate a fleet hunting Russian submarines in the North Atlantic. The agreement, known as the Luna House Pact, aims to protect critical undersea cables and pipelines vital for Britain's communications, electricity, and gas networks. At least 13 anti-submarine ships from both countries, including 5 Norwegian vessels, will patrol waters between Greenland, Iceland, and the United Kingdom. Royal Marines will also train in Norway for extreme cold weather operations. The pact includes joint wargaming, the use of Stingray torpedoes, and plans to develop unmanned motherships for undersea warfare. The Royal Navy will also adopt advanced Norwegian naval strike missiles. UK Defence Secretary John Healey said the deal strengthens NATO ties and ensures the UK is ready amid growing Russian activity in the North Atlantic. Let's in fact listen into what UK Defence Secretary and the Norway Defence Minister had to say.
And this Lone House Agreement means that together we will develop and we will operate a combined force of at least 13 anti-submarine frigates in the North Atlantic and High North. It means that together we will develop a new generation of uncrewed military and maritime vessels together. It means that we will together develop a new generation of munitions in order that together we can reinforce wider European security and the security of our two nations.
Close together. And we are now going to take more responsibility in Europe for our own security. There will be a burden shift, and we will spend much more money on defense. We will all agreed in NATO to spend 3.5% of GDP on defense within 2035. But we're not going to spend more. We need to spend better and smarter.
That's a wrap on America 360. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.